Hi, everybody. My name is Peter. I am glad to see all of you. I have some exciting developments on some research that you all helped me with about a month ago. If you weren't here, or if you've forgotten, let me refresh your memory. I drew some lines on some pieces of paper, and all you had to do was choose which lines you liked the most. You can write it in the comments. Just put like A, colon, 1, 2, or 3. I drew 4 sets of 3 lines, and you wrote in the comments 1, 2, or 3, and then I went through and manually tabulated them. There were over 600 responses. It took me way too long. I should have automated it somehow. I waffled a little bit on the best way to present this data. Someone suggested a line chart. I considered a bar chart, but I landed on pie charts because I'm hungry. And I haven't had pie in a little while. All right, so here's my Excel spreadsheet. I got my columns, A, B, C, D, and then I went through every single comment and wrote down what they voted, 1, 2, or 3. And if I just keep scrolling down, you can see goes all the way down to 662. So the 661 people voted, and I went through and wrote it all down. I got pretty fast at it by the end, and then I wrote a little function, a little COUNTIF function here to total it all up. And then I made some little automatically generated pie charts here, and then let's get into the meat and potatoes of the data. You can see here that in the first quiz, this is where I had some very simple lines. You can see that 12% of people liked the little line, 19% of people liked the really long line, and most people, 69% of people, liked the medium-sized line. This seems like the Goldilocks zone, if you will. This is the line that was just right. Moving on to quiz B, I started to make the lines a little more interesting. Started out with a curvy line. 30% of people liked this line. Then I made a little loop-de-loop. Only 16% of people liked that one. But then, when I kind of combined the curve and the loop, got a little more adventurous, 54% of people liked that one. It had broader appeal. All right, moving on to C. Started getting a little crazier here. Only 17% of people liked my first line. I started adding some sharp angles along with the curves here. And then with line number 2, more than half the people, 53%, liked this line where I added some sharp angles, some curves, and then flattened it out. Just kind of went straight off the edge of the paper. For line number 3, I did something kind of weird where I started going straight off and then it just kind of dropped straight off a cliff somewhat dramatically. 30% of people liked that. All right. And then finally, quiz number D. Things continued to get crazier here. I scribbled a crazy line, which 31% of people liked. I kind of like this line. It has a little profile of a face there at the end. And then the second line I drew, 46% of people liked. This one started getting scribbly and loose with it. And then finally, for the final line of the final test, I kept it really tight and scribbly, very self-contained. Quiz D is the only one where there wasn't a majority consensus. None of the lines reached over 50% of the vote. So take what you will from that. Anyways, there you have it. Our pie charts here. It's as interesting as you make it, I think. Thanks for all the help with that research. I'm not entirely sure what it all means or how it can be applied. I suppose maybe I should try to do a drawing using only those 4 most popular lines, but it's not what I'm doing today. Today I want to use a little bit of color. I'm whipping out the markers. I've got this big thing of Ohuhu markers, 160 colors. I'm not using all of them, but I am using some of them. So I'm just going to get to scribbling. Okay, first off, a couple of shout outs to viewers. Can I call them fans who I met in real life? The first one, I was having a chicken sandwich at a place called Bourbon Bowl, and I think their name was LeBrian or something like that. I'm so sorry if I got your name wrong, but you came up and said hi and said you watched my videos. It's very nice to meet you. And then at a place called Reconsidered Goods, Nick was in the warehouse sorting. Nick was reconsidering the goods. I don't know if I should even say that, because I don't know if I was supposed to be in the warehouse, but I was. And good to see you. Good to see both of you. Always fun to run into people in real life. All right, a couple of comments about this survey, this research I did. Have you ever met one of those people, or you might be one of these people who looks at the clock sometimes and notices it's like 3:33 or 11:11 or 4:44, and you're like, oh, it's time to make a wish. I mean, I notice when it's 3:33 too. I more notice when it's 11:34, because it spells hell upside down. Pardon the language. But I also, as I was typing in all the numbers into my Excel spreadsheet, I was noticing which people made votes that were, like which people voted 111 across the board, or 2s across the board, or 3s across the board. As you can see from the results, and as I was noticing, as I was typing them all in, I think guessing 2322 was the most popular vote, the most common sequence of votes. But there were a fair amount of all 2s. People voting 2222 for A, B, C, and D, and then a lesser amount, just a few people that voted all 3s, and then there was only one person, I'm pretty sure, that voted all 1s. I don't think this is really that significant in any way, other than it's just interesting because it was all 1s or all 2s or all 3s. Because there could have been several other combinations of numbers that only got guessed once, or maybe didn't get guessed at all, and they just didn't stick out to me because they weren't, four of a kind, as it were. So just a little more feedback. Also, some people, I didn't put in all 4 votes for them because a couple people said voting on quiz number D was too difficult, and so I didn't submit a vote for that one. And some people submitted like 2 votes for one of the quizzes, and for the sake of my data entry, I would just put in their first choice. I hope that's okay. But other than that, it was all pretty straightforward. And let me know if you've drawn any conclusions of your own. Also, mildly interesting, there are some flowers growing in my front yard right now that look like eggs. Like a cracked open, like a fried egg. I mean, they are white flowers with yellow centers. Maybe I'll insert a picture of them here. Up close, they might not look as much like eggs, but just like looking from my window or driving by, I think they look like a bunch of little fried eggs on stems, which is really cute and makes me want fried eggs. Also, I've been on spring break this week, and you know me, that means I've been at the beach partying like an animal. Just kidding. I've been at home working on some stuff, and sometimes I've been at school working on school projects there. Like I've been making some ceramic cups and weird little tiles that are hard to explain. I'll post those on Instagram when they're done. And been working on a sculpture, which is like a bunch of wood blocks all stacked on top of each other, and then hanging in the air on a rope. And the other day I welded some weird spoke things out of steel rods and giant like hex nuts to put in there to add some like little pokey things. Like now it's starting to look like a weird space station or something. Like in my mind, space stations often have a lot of weird things sticking out of them. But sometimes the problem with projects in art school is most of the the decisions I make it's just because I'm trying to make something that looks cool. A lot of the projects other people are making are because they have some deeper message, which is, I think these are both legitimate approaches. But one thing I'm learning is that at least, when I have crit, you have to kind of explain your project and the thoughts that went into it, your methods, the struggles you went through, stuff like that. And it's at least helping me to learn to talk about my art better. I've learned that you can pretty much make whatever you want and get a good grade as long as you can justify it, as long as you can explain it good enough, all the decisions you made, right? So, I'm not like the wood block sculpture I'm working on right now. I don't think it's some kind of commentary on society or something like that. It just looks cool, but at least I can go into the details of, there's all these like different principles of art. You can talk about things like symmetry and linearity and rhythm and texture and stuff like that. And you can talk about other sculptures that you're inspired by or that you're reacting to. In fact, for this sculpture, we had to go find another actual existing sculpture in a museum and make this piece that reacts to it. So that's a good thing to talk about right there. Like, hey, that one, the one I'm basing this one off of, was like a bronze sculpture that kind of looked like a growing biological like tree type thing. And here I am using biological. What I'm saying is that one was made out of like metal and it looked alive and growing, right? And then I'm kind of making the opposite thing where it's made of, mostly wood, and then it looks very rigid and industrial and mechanical almost. So it's kind of the inverse. I don't know. I'm not very good at talking about my art because for so long here on this YouTube channel, I was just like saying like, hey, I'm just drawing. I'm just having fun making lines. And I told myself I don't need to explain it or need to be able to explain it or even talk about it. Like I can just put it out into the world, let it float around, and people can react to it if they want to, which I still stand behind because a lot of the reasons I was making that art was kind of a form of self-therapy, just to sit down and be able to calm myself for a while and kind of, it's a kind of meditative process, right? Not everything has to be able to exist in that same intellectual space, right? But it's fun to be exploring that angle too. And in general, it's just more difficult to make things I like out of sculpture with sculpture. Anyways, it's just, look, so many years I've been drawing pictures, drawing lines, and I could make something I wanted just with the briefest stroke of a pen. But with a sculpture, sometimes a brief stroke of a pen is just the beginning of planning. And then you make a pen stroke, and then maybe make a few more drawings to plan it out, and then you make maybe a model, which takes a lot of time and work. You gotta work with like, the plaster or the cardboard or chipboard or balsa wood or whatever you're making the model out of. And then when you actually sit down to make the sculpture itself, you gotta work with that material after you source the material, figure out where to get it from. It's just so many more steps, so much more effort, so many more places where you can get kind of waylaid. Like you think, hey, I'm going to do this thing, but maybe the materials you're working with don't do it quite right, or you don't have the tools or the time, or just so many more things can go wrong, and you have to learn how to adjust and work with it. And I'm just used to that kind of instant gratification that is drawing, right? It just happens so much more immediately, and with sculpture, it's just so much more of a process. So I'm just, I'm enjoying how different it is and learning to be more patient with myself. And I already thought I was patient because I was, I thought, hey, I'm sitting here drawing for hours at a time. I'm a pretty patient person, but this takes a different type of patience because it takes weeks to make something. And sometimes, you gotta learn when to let go of certain ideas and adjust, like I said. Anyways, hope y'all are doing okay. Thanks for watching, and you're looking great today. Goodbye. All right? Goodbye.